So we're going to start by going over a few hormones. Does anyone know who Simon Sinek is? So he's a wonderful man. He is a leader of leaders. He talks a lot about how to not naturally become a leader. He uses science, rather, is what I want to say. He uses science to help people understand how to be a good leader. So we're going to take just a couple seconds, and if I can get this to work. Oh, it doesn't work.
So where do people like Johnny Bravo come from? Well, it's an age-old question. They're not born, they're actually made. If you look at the human animal is like a machine. There are systems inside our bodies that are trying to get us to do things that are in the interest of the survival of the human animal, right? Just like in a business, in a company, if you want people to do something, you offer them some sort of positive or negative incentive to direct the behavior, right? So if you want people to achieve a certain goal, you offer them a bonus if they achieve that goal, and they'll work towards that goal because they want the bonus. It's a very simple system. The human body works exactly the same way. It works exactly the same way. Inside our bodies are chemicals that are trying to get us to do things that are in the best interest of us. If you've ever had a feeling of happiness, pride, joy, love, fulfillment, all of these feelings that we have are chemically produced feelings. And they're produced by 4 chemicals predominantly. These are basically responsible for all of the feelings that I would generically call happiness. They are endorphins, dopamine, serotonin, and oxytocin. EDSO.
Kind of gives you a general idea of how important hormones are. So let's start off from there. Simon continues to talk about how these are kind of the selfish hormones, and they're called that because you don't necessarily need a person to have those hormones come out. These two are more interaction-based between people, and so we'll go into that a bit more. Pardon me. Anyone heard of a runner's high? Runner's high? Yeah. So runner's high is essentially what happens when you tear your muscles and your body releases endorphins, and it's to mask the pain. Now, again, don't really need anyone to do this. Dopamine, on the other hand, you can have dopamine when you're interacting with people, but oftentimes dopamine can be a reaction to a lot of different things. A good example is to-do list. Has anyone felt really good when they cross off their to-do list? No, you haven't?
I haven't even did do that.
Oh, well, that's probably why. Every time you cross off a mark on your to-do list, you get a little shot of dopamine. It's that feel good. You feel, yes, look, I did that, right? I'm also convinced that this is why Facebook is so popular, because every time you get a like, you feel a little good about it, you know? You get those likes, and I'm pretty convinced it's dopamine, although don't count me on that one. Dopamine can, when your phone goes off, you get a little shot. Again, you don't necessarily need people for dopamine. So I thought this was just a little interesting tidbit about endorphins. Endorphin is short for endogenous morphine, which is the internal form of morphine. And you can see the 2 receptors in the brain. Just a little interesting fact that I find. All right, so let's talk about serotonin. So the reason I started off with Simon Sinek is because I really wanted to get you thinking about how our chemicals in our body are really aimed at producing a behavior. And this has an advantage for us. It has lots of advantages. Now, serotonin has a lot of purposes. It's mostly found in the gut, actually, and the connection between brain and gut health has a lot to do with serotonin. But there is a portion that's found in the brain, and it helps reinforce relationships. So an example of this reinforcement of relationship. Has anyone, I'm going to ask you, I'm going to pick on you because you're new. Did you graduate high school?
Oh, yeah.
Did you graduate college?
Yeah.
When you graduated college, did you stand in front of a group of people?
No, because I kind of did it over the years.
Did you? Okay.
Yeah.
Did you for high school?
Yeah, we walked across the stage, yeah.
Did you feel good when you walked across the stage?
I think I did. It's been so long ago, but I for sure did.
Do you remember looking at your family?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. Was your family proud?
Oh, yeah.
That mutual connection you have where they're proud and where you're proud and you're excited, that's serotonin. It reinforces that bond. Another good example of this reinforcement is when you start dating someone. Anyone notice when they start dating someone? They stand a little taller, they feel a little better. That's serotonin. It really helps boost your confidence. It helps us look out for each other, and this is important. I'm going to go back to the prehistoric ages. If you're standing in the middle of a field and there's a bunch of predators on you, and you're by yourself, you're not going to be able to survive very easily. The likelihood that you're going to be able to ward off these animals is not going to happen. If you have a band of people with you, 3, 4 people, and you're stood back to back and you trust them and they're part of your tribe and you're able to ward off those people, that's serotonin that's helped reinforcing that relationship. And that's why it's so important, is because together we tend to work a little better. This is my favorite hormone. This is oxytocin. The first time I saw oxytocin, I was in a London museum, and there was a little vial, and it said liquid trust. And I thought, what in the heck is that? And it was oxytocin. Now, synthetic oxytocin doesn't have the same effects. They do use it to induce labor. It's called Pitocin. But naturally found in the body, it helps induce love, trust, friendship, that really warm feeling you get with people. It's also released when we do good acts for each other. When I first started working at the hospital, I want to say I was really nervous because I started at a new hospital, and the children's hospital is amazing too. And I was nervous. I wanted to do well. And there's one day I was coming out of the elevator, and I realized I needed to get back on. So I hit the elevator. I need to go down. And there's a family, and they've got a child on a gurney, and they're getting ready to enter in, and they need to go up. And I opened the elevator and said, no, take mine. I know I'm going down. You can take it. And the girl, she's on the bed. She's coming through. And I say, good luck. And her mom smiles. And, I smile. And the girl smiles. And oxytocin's being released there. That's a feel-good moment. And that's just a general, it's not just when I do something good or when you do something good. It's everybody that's involved with that. Oxytocin makes us feel good. And again, that helps us build our tribe, our trust, our group. It's definitely a bonding. So now that I've hopefully kind of stressed the importance of these relationships that we naturally try to build with each other, I want to talk about Helen Fisher. Now I'm going to play a video, but I would love to play this video. She is phenomenal. So, has anyone heard of Helen Fisher?
No.
No? She's a doctor who was asked by, I believe it was chemistry.com first, and they asked her, can you help us develop questions that will help link people together? And this must have been 10 or so years ago when the online dating really started. Maybe it was a little bit longer than that. But she helped them develop some questions, and it went well. And then Match.com came to her, and they said, can you help us figure out why certain people are attracted to certain people? Now, general ideas about love as is, we tend to fall in love with someone with a similar socioeconomic status, similar background, education level. We know these things, but what makes us draw into one person in particular? And this is really what she sought out to answer.
Wow, really?
So this is I love this part, this is my favorite part of the whole thing. This is the ventral tegmental area, the VTA. This little blue dot right here, and then this is looking directly down on the brain. Does anyone want to take a guess? So this is what activates in the brain when you're in love. So before I ask you that question, what Helen Fisher did is she grabbed a group of people that were newly in love and she put them in an MRI. She took a group of people who had just been broken up, put them into an MRI. I know, it's not very nice, and she even admittedly says it. And then she also takes a group of people who have been married on average 21 years or longer and put them into the MRI. And the people who were in a loving relationship and the ones that were in a long-term relationship had this piece activated, this VTA. Does anyone want to take a guess at the importance of where this is in the brain? No? No guesses? This is the reptilian part of our brain. This is as primitive, just about as primitive as it gets. And this is what's highlighting in love. So love has carried us from before we were humans all the way to now. And it will probably last even further. And being a science nerd and being a hopeless romantic as well, I just find this beautiful. That to survive, we need love. I mean, it's so deeply engraved in who we are. It's the primal, it's not even the primal, it's the reptilian part of our brain.
Wow.
I know, isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
This is why I love this. Like, everybody needs love. Okay, so next we're going to talk about what Helen Fisher found as far as her three stages of love, is what she calls them. So the first stage is lust. Now this,
I know.
right? You don't even need a man to have lust, you can just have it. The whole purpose of lust is really just to get us observing what's out there. It's run by testosterone and no estrogen. My last talk that we gave, we talked a lot about increasing your testosterone production, and you can do this as a woman or a man, and that's what kind of increases our sexual appetite. So again, this just kind of gets us looking. The next phase is romantic love, and this is what we most often associate with love. It's run by these three hormones here. Norepinephrine is adrenaline. It's what makes our hands balmy. It's what quickens our heart. Dopamine, again, that's the one that you don't necessarily need with someone, but you can have it, especially when you're just getting to know someone and they call and you get that, oh, it's exciting. And then, of course, serotonin, which is going to reinforce those bonds. This is the phase that is, the honeymoon phase, if you will. Of course, we all know that the honeymoon phase does not always last for people. Some of us don't want it to end. So what she found is there's a third phase, and it's the attachment phase. Attachment, I think, is the most lovely. This is the one that they found in the couples that have been married for 21 years and longer and were still in love. And they had that VTA area of their brain still setting off. It's run by these two different hormones here. We had talked about a little bit about oxytocin already. Oxytocin is released in all sorts of different ways. It's released when you give birth. It's one of the reasons why mom and baby tend to have such a strong bond. It's released when you nurse, which is one of the reasons why nursing is such a wonderful, powerful thing. I nursed my baby and I just loved it. And I'm sure it's this hormone here that did it. It's released when you do something nice for someone. It's released, when you're in love with someone. It really is the love hormone. The interesting thing about oxytocin is that it has to build up in the system. If you do something nice for one person one day, you're not suddenly going to love them and think about them all the time. It doesn't work that way. Oxytocin, again, it builds up. So the more you get in your system, the more often you can produce that, the longer lasting it's in the system, and that more trust you're building up. So we're going to talk about vasopressin. Cute little bowls. I love these bowls. Let's see, what kind of bowls are they? Prairie bowls? Yeah, so these are prairie bowls. And prairie bowls are part of the 3% that does pair bonding. And essentially what that is what we do. We bond up to rear our children. Prairie voles do the same thing, and they have the same hormones released. They have oxytocin and vasopressin. So the interesting about prairie voles, what they did with their study, is they inactivated these two hormones in the prairie vole. And they found that a once aggressive mate who was guarding his mate, very aggressive, they were very aggressive voles, they no longer did it. They no longer had that protective, no longer that, keeping other voles away from their mate. So it gives you a bit of an idea. One last little tidbit of this, what I found really beautiful in the long-term couples that have the VTA activated. These long-term couples who have this sustained oxytocin, this vasopressin, and in that VTA region, the areas of their brains that would normally light up for anxiety didn't light up. And I think that kind of pays homage to our survival as a species, how much we need love. Not only does it have benefits as we're going through it, but long term, it helps calm us, it keeps anxiety away. And I'm going to end with this beautiful quote. I've decided to stick with love. Hate is too great a burden to bear, by MLK. And I think this is beautiful because not only is it backed up by what we know in general, but also the brain.